Hello everybody.
Hello.
Sorry to keep you out of the sun and the jacuzzis, the bars and the gambling, but you can do that tonight. So thanks for having me here, Mike. It's great to share the floor, really, with Robert, Mika and David. So today I'm going to move pretty quickly because we've run over a little bit of time, which is kind of standard procedure for these kind of things. But I want to go through quite a few different subjects here. I'm trying not to repeat anything that the other speakers have said, but there are some crossovers, because the way I look at things from a sort of global perspective. I just can't help it. I become like an obsessed megalithomaniac traveller, and I get all around the world at any opportunity, on cruises, boats, balloons, anything you like. These are some photos of these sort of serpents, which I keep finding all over the world. Only part of this talk is going to cover this idea that there was like some kind of serpent elite. What I'm interested in is what that means. I believe it has some connection with earth energies, with ley lines, with grids and things like this, as well as the rising of the Kundalini and possibly shamanic and psychedelic things as well. But as we go through, we'll see, see how all this fits together. This is my book. It's a small book. It's not anywhere near the size of this. It's deceived a few people when I've shown it. Oh, it's tiny. But I've put together a whole kind of history and outline of what is going on with earth grids, ley lines, sacred sites and earth energies into one little volume, which was an intense amount of work. We're going to cover some of that in the lecture today. It's actually cut off at the bottom, but it doesn't matter. I just want to sort of paraphrase a few points from this. This is one of my mentors, one of the legendary figures who inspired me more than anyone else in the world, I have to admit. He died a few years ago. Founded Megalithomania with us, this conference and these tours and events we put on. There's me and him up there on the top right. And John Michel wrote the brilliant book, The View Over Atlantis, back in 1969, and he was talking about things we're talking about today, but a long time before now, and he was a real visionary, a real pioneer, and he saw this picture of the way these mounds, megaliths, and ancient sites went from horizon to horizon all over the planet, and we still, even back in 1969 and still today, we're still trying to work out what was going on. And he was very aware of the serpent, what he called serpent or dragon lines, these energies, and how the symbolism became part of that. So I'm really kind of following on from John Michel's work, because he was a big inspiration for me, and his unfortunate passing left a sort of wide hole about in this kind of research, especially in England. So I'm going to start with some sort of ideas about grids. This is a painting my brother did for my book. This is from a Hopi creation myth, where the creator created these two brothers to create sound and structure with the crystal at the center of the earth. And with these two harmonies happening, it created what was called spots of the form. And these are power spots on the surface of the globe. I go into it in more detail in my book. I'm going to move fairly quickly through this, but it just shows you that even very early creation myths of different cultures around the world have some inkling about kind of grids or global patterns. But let's jump off planet for a moment here, because this is kind of, we are on an ancient alien cruise, so I want to just have a few little potential alien things thrown in there. I've been fascinated by these grids, but when I started looking at other planets and looking at what other researchers have found, there's a remarkable amount of geometries and alignments and anomalies on other planets. Mars is a classic one, and you can see here, this is the start of we're getting into grids here. If you place a tetrahedron in a sphere, it touches the surfaces at 19.47 or 19.5 degrees above or below the equator, depending which way you put it in. Interestingly, there's massive volcanoes, the Olympus Mons volcanoes, are at that latitude on Mars. We have Hawaii. We have that on Earth, and there's other anomalies throughout our solar system with various planets that also have stuff on the surface at 19.5 degrees north or south latitude. And that kind of compelled me. We even have some solar flare activity peaks around this kind of latitude as well. This just shows you where Olympus Mons is, which is the largest volcano complex in our solar system. We also have odd geometries on Miranda, Uranus's moon. We have pentagons and hexagons kind of forming there. We even have great big triangles, which could be faces of an icosahedron. We'll get a bit more into what that means regarding the Earth shortly. Even on Saturn, at the north pole of Saturn, we have this huge hexagon, which is double the width of the Earth. It's huge, and it kind of stays there. It kind of just maintains its composure. It's like a cymatic pattern. It just holds its energy there while everything spins around it. I mean, I don't know if this is just the nature of planets, the nature of the cosmos, but it does make you question what is underneath all this, what is this guiding source behind these different geometries we're finding on different planets, and how does it relate to us and the Earth? It just shows you another picture from NASA. Just borrowed that off their website. And even on Saturn's moon, the Iapetus, we find this ridge that goes around the whole centre of the moon, which is about 12 miles tall, 12 miles wide. It's almost like a wall that's been built around the dead centre. It's like a tennis ball's been cut in half and glued together, roughly. It's very strange. So there's lots of these strange anomalies, which really kind of caught my attention when I was looking at grids on Earth. This just shows you if a dodecahedron is placed within a sphere, which is a 12-sided polyhedral. And you can see that when these Russian researchers back in the early 70s first did some research on this, because they were inspired by someone else, Ivan Sanderson, we'll talk about in a moment. They realised if you just place a dodecahedron, fix it at the north and south pole and rotate it to the right place, the whole mid-Atlantic ridge almost follows this whole dodecahedral shape. So we're seeing first glimpses really of a planetary grid here. And even Plato famously said that the Earth looks like a ball sewn from 12 pieces of skin, paraphrased, which would resemble a dodecahedron, so it's got 12 faces. And this is the Ivan Sanderson research that kind of really blew my mind. I mean, this was found in the early 1970s. He was a paranormal investigator, he was a biologist, but he did some excellent research on the different, what he called violet vortices around the world. And it was later published by Chris Bird in an article, The 12 Devils Graveyards Around the World. And the Bermuda Triangle, which we're actually sailing through right now, or maybe last night when we were sleeping, we're very close to that. And there's other anomalies. He found lots of different plane disappearances, anomalies, time dilations, and other strange things happening at certain places around the world. And when he mapped them out, he realised they were equally spaced, plus the North and South Pole. Here we have Hawaii, around Easter Island, the Devil's Triangle off the coast of Japan, and many others. It shows you the 3D version of that. Exactly what he realised he found was a icosahedron, which is a 20-sided, 20 triangles over a sphere. And this just shows you it here. And obviously the points are very interesting. And because he'd done so much research on this, he really did find a planetary grid at work. Not maybe the planetary grid, because I think there's many different ideas about this, not just one. But he found something going on, that these platonic solids, or these natural geometries which fall within spheres, do have an effect on the surface. And maybe we're so small, we don't really get it, we don't understand it. But it's when you start looking at the migratory paths of animals, fault lines, and lots of other global movements, the way things move around the Earth, you start to see the patterns. This just shows you the icosahedron here. I've just drawn a line through Africa there, which is basically what I believe is the original prime meridian, which many other people are realising. It kind of clicks everything into place when you're looking at the placement of sites around the world. The white line there is a very famous the Great Earth Circle, like a global ley line that goes all the way around the planet, discovered by Jim Allenson. And he found many hundreds of sites kind of linking around us. If any of you have seen Revelation of the Pyramids documentary, this is the line they're talking about, although they've widened it to something like 100 kilometers wide, which is cheating. His is extremely accurate. It's a very thin line around the planet. We'll look more at Earth circles as we go along. But first, let's have a quick look at the Russians' research, because they originally were inspired by Ivan Sanderson's icosahedral grid he found. But they felt something else was going on. They actually, these were kind of top Russian scientists. This is all published in journals back in the early 70s, some of their original illustrations here. And they believe that the Earth, the crystal, there was a crystal at the centre of the Earth, and over millions of years of spinning, it attracted mass to it and created the Earth. And they believe the energetic effect of this crystal can still be detected on Earth. And they believe it's an icosahedron and a dodecahedral system, which is sort of pumping out from this crystal at the centre, very similar to the Hopi creation myth, as we heard earlier. And this is sort of speculative, a lot of this, but this has been published in, this was in the scientific journal, so it kind of, it's worth taking another look at this. This is like the Earth's net, really, around the planet. Again, this is from the Russians. They developed this a bit further. And basically things started, slipping into place. There was some ancient civilizations. We have the Mid-Atlantic Ridge. We have certain points like this one, where the landmass almost forms around it in South America there. And this just shows you the icosahedron and the dodecahedron together. The yellow and the black, again with the prime meridian going down the centre there. And then you can actually get this grid program developed by Beth Hagens. And you can actually overlay it in Google Earth now, so you can actually go and play with it and mess about with all the geometries. You can zoom in, see where the lines go, and it's kind of fun. And I think it's worth, if you're serious, into this kind of nerdy kind of stuff like I am, you'll do that. This is a completely different area of research over in New Zealand from a pilot called Bruce Cathy, who unfortunately died recently as well. And he came up with fundamentally, he was following the flight paths of what he believed UFOs were happening all over New Zealand and Australia, different places. And he kind of, when he plotted them out, because he was a navigator of the skies, he came up with this grid here and realised they move in straight lines all over the place, and there's some kind of grid there. And he realised, by pinning it to something that was discovered at the bottom of the ocean off the coast of South America. I don't know how he came up with that. It actually looks very much like a type of sea sponge. He came up with this, which is basically a cube and octahedral grid, which is two of the other platonic solids. So suddenly we see all the 5 platonic solids. We see the tetrahedrons on Mars and Hawaii. We saw the icosahedron with Ivan Sanderson and the Russians, and he came up with the cube and the octahedral grid. And suddenly there was like a sort of full formula forming here, which is something that William Becker and Beth Hagens started working on together. This is a combination. The yellow is the octahedral grid with the icosa and the dodeca. It starts getting a little bit complicated to look at after a while. But here's a nice kind of easy thing to gaze at. This is the work of William Becker and Beth Hagens. They kind of combined all those together and worked actually with some of the theories of Buckminster Fuller, synergistics 2 in fact, and realised that there's more to it than that because of the shape of the Earth isn't quite spherical. And they kind of worked with the icosahedron fundamentally, but realised the cube and the octahedron also fit, as does the tetrahedron, and they all kind of click into place. Because when you see things like this, you see the South America area here, this point, kind of the landmass forms around it, and likewise, the Gulf Carpentaria here in Australia is another grid point there, right, exactly in the middle of that. So these are kind of speculative ideas of energy at work within the planet. Some researchers suggest it's all energy. There's ley line. This is all ley lines or alignments over distances, or it's even energy that links ancient sites together. I'm not 100% sure about that. I cover the different theories in my book, but as I've travelled and as I've accurately sort of plotted these on different maps, Google Earth, this program that John Martineau's designed, it's not cut and dry. There's not just one grid, but there's certainly patterns that you can't deny when you start looking around the world. This shows you one of the original Rebecca Hagen's European grids. What they did, they were basically professors at the university up in New England, and they would get their whole class as a class project for like a year to go through all the different maps and kind of lay out all the different things. So they had this multiple research sort of facility going on. Somehow they let them do it at this academic institution, but they came up with some remarkable finds. This is the grid over Europe, but they have realised that since Google Earth and other satellite technologies come forward, this was back in the 80s and early 90s they were doing this, there are a few adjustments here. But one of the things that grabbed my attention was this line here. This is over England, and this is very close to the St Michael line, which is a famous ley line that goes across southern England, which is actually some major Earth energy currents associated with that. This just shows you the modern version of it laid over at Google Earth. And this just shows you England again here, Britain. And you can almost see how it kind of shapes the landscape. speculatively. And here's North America, and we're kind of, there's a big point there, and obviously you've got the Bermuda Triangle in that area there. So we're really on a grid point this last couple of days. It's major. And then here we have some interesting, there's like a huge communications array here. It's the area of the Hohokam that go back about 10,000 years. They built these big canals. And there's this strange cactus that grows there, which is psychedelic, I understand. And you can just see, I mean, this is the sort of thing you probably want to gaze at as you probably, your house might be on a grid line. This just shows you the 3D version. Basically what they came up with eventually was this, that this isn't exactly an icosahedron, it's actually a rhombic triagonahedron. You've all heard of that, obviously. And this just shows you one of the faces here over this, the area of the Americas, most notably here. Obviously, it kind of touches many other sites here. This is very close, some sites down in Peru, Canada, and other places. So yeah, you can see there's quite interesting patterns forming. And interestingly, back in Scotland, north of England, if you're not sure where it is, there's many of these stone spheres have been discovered which clearly show all the different platonic solids. They've been carved in stone. About you can hold them in your hand. These are all in the museums in Glasgow. There's some in the Ashmolean Museum in Oxford. This is actually a later Roman one found in France. But these ones here all show 5 platonic solids. But there's also ones that show a combination of the cube and the octahedron and the icosahedron. So we know that they weren't only working with platonic solids and Archimedean solids, but they were combining them, they were messing about with them, they were playing with them. And this is 2,000 or 3,000 years before Plato was even born. So you can't really call them the platonic solids anymore. So sorry, Plato. But we know that they, and there's actually a researcher, a brilliant geometer called Keith Critchlow, and he came up with this. He analysed all the different stone spheres that have been discovered, analysed them into one unique geometrical spherical system, came up with this, which is identical to the classical Becker-Hagen Earth grid system. So he suggests they were using them as navigational tools. They were using them for astronomy, for mapping, and even surveying. Just using them as props to kind of work things out, which I found, remarkable. So let's get into some other things. So I'll give you a quick overview of the grid there. I've got much more details in the book on a DVD I've done about it as well. But I wanted to give you a quick overview because I think it's quite an interesting subject that a lot of people aren't really sure about. I don't quite get it, understand. But what I'm interested in is also geodesy or geodesy, which is like the connection of sites around the world and how they interrelate. And I think there's quite an important system here in place that's put there by the ancients that we're just starting to comprehend. This is just one example here. This is just an alignment directly between Newgrange in Ireland and the Great Pyramid of Giza. And that distance there is exactly 1/10 of the circumference of the planet. If you just multiply that by times 10, it will come back around exactly to Newgrange. And so we're finding these kind of correlations for different places around the world. Is it a coincidence? We're not sure. It just shows you another one. This is more about orientation than it is distance. This is the great Newark earthworks, which Sheena and I visited last year. We did a road trip around all the mound culture sites of Ohio, Illinois, Kentucky, and all other places for about 2 or 3 months, I think it was. About 6 weeks, wasn't it? Yeah. Looking for all the giants that Mika and Joyce were looking forward to. And what I found particularly fascinating about this is that if you just draw a line, just following the orientation of it, and just continue it around the world, it hits the Great Pyramid. And it's 6,000 miles away. So was that a coincidence? Were they pointing sites to the Great Pyramid? How on earth would they do that? Who could have done it? Were they able to fly through the air to do this? Who knows? But it's there. It's carved in the earth. It's built in stone. You can't deny it. This shows you a close-up of some of the earthworks here at Newark. Unfortunately, they've actually built a golf course within the main Newark earthworks. It's a huge area. This just shows you, this is something that Ross Hamilton put together actually. This is one of the faces of the Great Pyramid, the size. Just to show you the size of the Newark earthworks. It's huge. It's vast. It goes on for a few miles, square miles. And he believes that the geometry of the pyramids is also present within the geometry of the newer earthworks. The same principles are at play. They want you to keep it there. And if you use earth or you use stone, it's unlikely to get too badly damaged, apart from the odd golf course built within it. Here just shows you the shape of it here, and you can see the eight-sided here, eight-sided shape. There's another great earthwork here, which is a huge ditch here. It's massive, a massive bank. And look at just the vast scale of earthworks here. This is probably 8 miles, 9 miles wide here. Most of it's been destroyed, unfortunately, but these still exist. That's the one you can still really visit and hasn't been damaged too much because it's just simply too big. Again, this just shows you what the one I was pointing at there, the very deep kind of henges, which is exactly what you find at Avebury in England, on a smaller scale as Stonehenge, and other sites all over the British Isles and over Europe. Again, this just shows you the alignment close up with the golf course. So I get very frustrated because imagine just a golf course in 2,000 years' time. Archaeologists can go, wow, this is some kind of sacred landscape. Must be aligned to the star. So were ancient sites actually sports facilities? There's a new book coming out. That's just the same picture again. I'm not sure why that's in there twice. But what I do find that there was an ancient science of global positioning, which is what we've just been looking at, sort of various examples. There's another one, for instance, Avebury to Newgrange. This is two of the most impressive megalithic sites in Britain and Ireland. Avebury is huge, it's much bigger than Stonehenge. I've never been there. It's so big they built a village in it. It actually has a crossroads, a pub, and about 30 or 40 houses in it. It's that big as a stone circle. Then it has these avenues that go on for several miles as well. And if you draw a line between Avebury and Newgrange on Google Earth or any mapping system, it's 1/100th of the planetary circumference. So they were using these kind of systems even within just the British Isles themselves. And then we just have I've got a few other examples I'm going to throw at you just to get your brain tingling. But Avebury to Chichen Itza is 1/5 of a circle, 72 degrees. And there's so many examples. I haven't really got time to go into detail, but I can, it's in the book and I can fire some more info at you day after tomorrow. Again, we have evidence even in the Book of Enoch that was discovered that kind of suggests they were surveying in ancient times. And I saw in those days how long cords were given to the angels. They went and they took themselves wings and flew and went towards the north. And I asked an angel saying, why have they taken cords and gone off? And he replied, they've gone to measure. So they're taking wings and flying to places and measuring. So what was going on there? Is this just an analogy of something that was happening, or is this an actual description? And so even in the Book of Enoch, we do find evidence. There's other passages in the Book of Enoch that mention windows within stones and things like this, which would suggest they're going up to Stonehenge area and things like this. So there's lots of little clues you can find as you keep looking. But fundamentally, I think one of the key things when you're looking at the relationship, spatial distances between sites around the planet is there has to be a prime meridian. Now forget Greenwich, that's wrong. What I believe the prime meridian was, and what most people realise now when they look at these kind of ancient sites and the connection between them, is that Giza, the prime meridian went through Giza Plateau, went through the Great Pyramid, I personally think. And then you start everything all these other major sacred sites around the planet click into place. This is something that is being studied by different researchers over many years, and I kind of summarise it today and in my book. Even the ancient maps kind of have that area around Giza. Some of these do actually focus on Alexandria, which was a later centre of learning. Some of the maps are based on that. But I think the earlier original prime meridian was Giza. And these just show you maps that show that they were travelling around the world. They must have been. This is classic stuff. Everyone's probably seen these. It's Robert's books, David, but everyone's kind of knows about these. But I think when you're looking at the spatial relationship between ancient sites, this proves that they were studying the whole Earth in antiquity. And the passages from the Book of Enoch were probably true. This is actually a picture from Graham Hancock's book, Heaven's Mirror. He let us use it for my Earth Grids book. And he found, again, he was using Giza as the prime meridian, and all the spatial relationships between sites were all a certain amount of degrees apart. And all the numbers they were apart were they were kind of subdivisions of 360, but they were also precessional numbers, which is very, very strange that they were working with precessional numbers when they were placing sites, as though they were placing sites to encode their knowledge of precession. Now, this is quite advanced, and they must have, been at quite a high level of intelligence and sophistication to even consider that as a possibility. But the other thing, which is these same numbers, that all are precessional numbers, is the fact that they're also angles within a pentagon are the same as precessional numbers. Something that John Martineau and I kind of realised when we were looking at Graham's research is that pentagon, it's almost like the pentagon, which is a specific geometry, is, as we saw earlier, the faces of the dodecahedron and other things, encode precessional numbers, and then that's encoded around the world. So it starts to get a little bit weird the more you look into this. Here's just a few examples of different sites, degrees away from Giza. Here's several sites. This is actually in the book as well. It's just copied out of the book. But it's just a few examples here that are very interesting. Like this, these are all from Giza, this whole list here. This whole list is just between whatever sites we were looking at. Forget Giza, I think. So Angkor Wat's Prehistoric is 180 degrees, half a circle, halfway around the world. Paracas to Easter Islands, 36 degrees, 1/10 of a circle, and so on and so forth. So we even managed to get the Bosnian pyramids in there, which so I don't know if that's any evidence to support that, but we're not sure about that. But anyway, I just wanted to show you these as some examples that it's almost like the major sites they were building are interrelated. The smaller sites maybe not so much. It's the big, massive megalithic sites, the earthwork sites that were there to last. And even if we go latitudinally around the planet, kind of north and south, some very interesting examples pop up here. For example, Giza is pretty much 30 degrees, arguably. It's not exactly that now with the way we have the equator. But if we go from the equator north, Avebury, which is the major megalithic serpent temple of Britain, that there to there is 1/7 of the way around the planet. And interestingly, if you divide 360 by 7, you get the numbers that come out of the exact longitude and latitude of where it is on the planet, which is very strange in itself. That's just one example, which I'm going to give you today. And even within 50-second parallel between 51 and 52 degrees, the division between Stonehenge, Avebury and the Rollrights are all based on 7s. These are like major stone circles in England. So there's some very sophisticated work going on here. Then John Martineau discovered this. This is a huge earthwork here. This is one of the inner stone circles at Avebury. Yeah. This is bigger than Stonehenge, this circle here. And he noticed these strange angles on the earthworks here. And when he drew lines between them and he divided the angles between them, immediately the longitude and latitude popped up, bang on, 360 over 7. Again, so they're encoding stuff, not only placement on the Earth, they're encoding the same knowledge within the sites themselves. It's just you've got to learn how to read them. Here's another quite an interesting example. This is a little bit different view on it, but Delphi, Delos and Dodona here, which are all in the whole Greek islands area. These are oracle sites of ancient Greece, that area. They're exactly 1 degree of latitude apart from each other. And they're actually on this alignment. It's 2,500 long mile alignment with hundreds of sites dedicated to St. Michael and Apollo. Skellig Michael, St. Michael's Mount, Mont Saint Michel, all these Michael sanctuaries, and it becomes more Apollo sanctuaries, and it ends in Armageddon. Seriously. So we can see that they were working in different ways around the planet. It's a big alignment to kind of lay out. This is another great Earth circle discovered by Robin Heath. The alignment between Stonehenge and the Bluestone site where the stones come from in Wales, if you extend that alignment and go around the world, it goes through Delphi, Giza, Mecca, goes through many of the sites including the Serpent Mound, comes back through the Sligo megaliths and back to the Stonehenge again. So you can't deny what's going on here. Now this is just an earthwork site, huge earthwork site in Portsmouth, Ohio, which we visited. The only thing left of it is this. These two kind of eyes of this octopus type serpent thing. Look how similar it is to Avebury, how Avebury used to look. It kind of really blew my mind. And also we have the sanctuary temple down here, and the equivalent here is this, or this. So we're seeing parallels here. Now this is about 6 times the size of Avebury, this is huge. So we're seeing parallels in different areas around the world. This is an ancient, an old picture of Stonehenge. Interesting few little, just following on from Mika's talk there about Stonehenge. There's been questions about Stonehenge, about who built it and why. And we're starting to, there is a whole sort of movement happening that's suggesting these giant skeletons they keep finding are real. I mean, these are just some reports here. This is where they found a 7-foot skeleton around Salisbury. This is another early report of a 9-foot 4-inch skeleton in one of the mounds around Stonehenge. This is a photo someone took 4,000 years ago. But there was actually a huge skull on display in a local church that had been on display for 100 or so years. A huge skull. Everyone thought it was like some fake skull, but it wasn't. It was a real one that was found in a mound around on Salisbury Plain near Stonehenge. Maria Wheatley is working on trying to relocate it. It's disappeared. And even this is the earliest picture that's ever been found of Stonehenge. And it shows Merlin here, the bearded one, summoning the giants over from bring the stones over from ancient Ireland, build what's called, it used to be called the Giants' Dance before it was called Stonehenge. And this is the earliest depiction of that. This is written in the ancient, the ancient books, History of the Kings of Britain. This shows you an electrical resistivity map of Stonehenge. This shows you all the way the earth energies move through it. Just an incidental thing here. And just some other earth energies at some sites in America. And this kind of intrigued me. This is the work of Robin Heath. He's been finding Pythagorean triangles over the landscape of Britain, believing that it was a great survey took place using these triangles. This is the famous lunation triangle. This is the alignment that goes around the world, remember? Serpent, Mount, Mecca, Giza, all that kind of stuff. Stonehenge is there. Lundy, which actually means elbow, which I thought was interesting. We actually went there in 2008 and discovered a stone circle at that point. Seriously, I went over there with Robin Heath and a bunch of researchers. He surveyed what looked like this rough bunch of stones and found a perfect flattened B stone circle as based on Alexander Thom's original geometries. This is the bluestone site where the stones come from. So it's almost like where they quarried is part of the pattern of the survey, leaving us clues for future generations. And they left some stones there, like they do all over the world. They left a big one at Easter Island, they left the Aswan obelisk in Egypt. Even at Göbekli Tepe, they left a big T-shaped 24-foot pillar in the quarry there. It's almost like these are part of the clues, part of the signatures of what I believe are these serpent people. This is Arbelo. This is Arbelo. It's beautiful. It's an amazing site on Anglesey. I've been invited to go and be part of this trip there in the summer, June, because I've been doing a lot of research on this in the background, and these guys kind of wanted me to kind of share it with the group. And we're going to go to this site and we're going to that site, so we're going to hit 2 points of these 2 different triangles. It's just one of many giant reports from Wales. I'm not going to go into detail, you don't have to read all that. And just in North Wales, they found this whole kind of cavern system, this whole cave, this quarry that's deep in the earth. 3.5, it's a copper mine, in fact, very similar to what we find up in Michigan, Wisconsin, all that area. 3,500 years old. They found these huge hammers. There's no way humans our size, unless they were like Arnold Schwarzenegger or someone, could actually carry. So there must have been giant people wielding 60 or 70 pound hammers for the quarry. This is the trip I've been invited on if anyone's interested. Further back. Also, this is the alignment between, if you continue, between Stonehenge up to the Bluestone site. There's also this has been discovered, which is something we're going to be looking at this summer. It links Stonehenge with Glastonbury, with Avebury, with these other sites into this great star pattern, which is Peter Knight, who discovered this, called the Wessex asteroid. This is the Great St Michael line. This is actually this line here. So we've got the Michael line here, and we've got the alignment between Stonehenge and the Bluestone site here, in this pattern within the whole landscape over southern England. So it all gets a bit silly after a while. Can't really keep up with it. So this is the original alignment, rediscovered by John Michel, which he published in the View over Atlantis Many sites, stretching 300 miles, dedicated to St Michael, some to St Mary, and many to St George as well, who was the dragon slayer. And you see him stabbing the dragon, which I believe is manipulating the earth energies, or is holding. Another interpretation is that it's holding back the pagan religion to bring in the new Christian religion. But what happened was, when Hamish Miller and Paul Broadhurst went to dowse this line, they actually found two great earth energy currents weaving around it like a caduceus, going straight, there's a straight line of alignment, it's like the sword of the caduceus, these two serpents weaving around it in a beautiful manner, one male, one female, hence the Michael and Mary lines. And I've been up and down this line for the last 15 years, and I've dowsed, I've explored, I've had mystical experiences, and it really is quite something. And it's, it goes to Glastonbury. I've moved back to Glastonbury partly because of this. Avebury, it doesn't go through Stonehenge. Stonehenge isn't far away. If you want to visit it, it goes all the way up through my local area where I was born and bred in Cambridge, through Wanderbury Ring, which I'm writing a book, I'm just finishing a book about at the moment. It's an incredible alignment, which I believe is actually global alignment. Oh yeah, we're doing I forgot about this. We're doing a trip there as well in the summer because we're just completely obsessed by it. It's almost like John Martineau as well. So anyone who kind of grew up and read The Son of the Serpent by Hamish Miller and Paul Broadhurst, that is the book to read. That is unbelievable. That was the one book that changed my life completely and made me realise there's a mystical, there's a secret, energetic aspect to history. It's not just all about kings and queens and dinosaurs before that, as I was taught at school. But this is a study. This is a layout of the grid combined with some other major ley lines. This is the Michael line. Also these circles of perpetual choirs, which we're going to look at as well this summer. These are all just the megalithic sites marked on it. There's the Apollo Athena axis, the one that goes all the way through Europe here. We're going to go down here. I've been there before on St Michael's Mount. It's pretty mind-blowing. And there's the lunation triangle there as well, just to sort of blast you. It's a bit nice. So this is actually up my local area at Wanderbury. This is the Mary energy line that goes through here, and the crop circles always seem to form on these Michael and Mary lines. Hopefully they're going to continue because there's been a bit of a lack of them over the last couple of years. I'm not sure why. Maybe 2012 had enough, world didn't end. This is the global version that Robert Kuhn put together. He's a visionary. I'm not going to go into detail here, but I'm very interested in this area here and Lake Titicaca, obviously. Well, and up through Mexico. And here, we're going here this month, I think, in fact, to check out stuff down there. I'm not going to go into detail, but we can get into that the day after tomorrow, maybe. And Robert Kuhn believes they were like chakra points of the planet, if you're into the more spiritual aspect. And obviously, Glastonbury, heart chakra. So that's where I live. And this is actually a Lake Titicaca, it's the island of the sun. My friend Sean Cohen, who's a geomancer, he kind of laid out, if you stretch the Michael line all the way around the world in a dead straight line, it goes right through the middle here. And we believe we found these other currents coming here. We went there with a bunch of dowsers and geomancers back in November with David and a few others. This is the plume serpent energy line. So whether these are global or not, we're not sure, but we found things, they seem to connect. We're just trying to piece something back together, we're not sure how or why. This is where the lines kind of go through, the north part of the island of the sun, and this is the alignment standing on it. And this is the area where Viracocha was said to have emerged, the great plumed serpent, the great feathered serpent god of the Andes. It's also the sort of where the Inca, originators came from as well. So there's a whole story with that. And then here's the classic path of Viracocha, which kind of goes through this whole area, many of the other megalithic ancient sites that he was said to have built with his followers. And he is actually said to have created a race of giants to build these sites, which I found quite interesting. But yeah, we're doing a trip there later this year. We were hoping to get Robert over this year, but we're going to have to postpone until next year, we hope. You don't stop, you want to get around the world. This just shows you again what we're looking at here. This is where it's a very powerful area. It's really, if you're sensitive to energies, that is a place to visit if you want to really get a taste of it. Something about the altitude as well, combined with that. And there's a lot of geology there. When Robert was over last year with us, and we had several other geologists this year, all saying the same thing. There's a fault line there going along the edge of our island of the sun. There's some very magnetic rock, which kind of compresses. There's piezoelectrical stuff happening. So that could be part of the reason why it became a sacred place with the ancient peoples. And this, I've detected a similar line, or the same line, going up through Mexico, going up through the Olmec area, specifically through La Venta, which kind of intrigued me somewhat. This is one of the classic Olmec sites, which David has written about in his Mystery of the Olmecs book. But there's other connections around the world, so I'm going to whip through this fairly quickly. Let me just check this time. Yeah, I'm doing okay. Now we've seen many of the connections already, thanks to the other great speakers we've had over this today, really. Yeah, in fact, just today. But we'll see that there are strange things happening around the world. I'm going to try not to repeat what we've seen already, but there's a few anomalies here. This is just the stone circle phenomenon. Now everyone just assumes England, Britain is the stone circle capital, which it is, because there's 1,000 stone circles in Britain. This is actually one from Britain. This is up on in Cumbria. This is actually in Tripoli, in North Africa. This is in Argentina. This is in Armenia, Karavanj, and this is in Silistani, Peru. And there's actually 2 or 3 more of these we found this year when we walked a bit further out the way. So then it's not just in one place. Are these the same people doing this? Why would you build circles of stone? Why would you do that unless you it was part of a tradition or part of a system you were using? This is the biggest stone circle in the world. This is in Morocco. Huge. I'm planning on going here in the next couple of months, hopefully. It's called Masura. There's a huge mound within it, but it's bigger than Avebury. Everyone thought Avebury was the biggest stone circle, but North Africa has got it. It's got it down. And so it's a fascinating site. This just shows you some of the beautiful looking archaeological park in Argentina with some beautiful carvings on it as well. No one's sure how old that is. And Göbekli Tepe has stone circles. I mean, we've seen that today. They are like stone circles, really. They're a bit different. They're a bit more sophisticated. There's a lot more to it than that. We went over there in September last year, with Graham and Andrew Collins. And this I've spotted in one of the books. This looks like a bit of head binding going on here. And this goes back 6,000 BC, which I found quite interesting because actually skulls being found quite away from there, but in the general Iran region, shows the elongation. We saw some of these earlier already, but I just wanted to throw these in there because these are very beautiful relief carvings, which are very similar to, like it's been pointed out already, to Peru and Easter Island. But these are just the ones from Silistani. I managed to get Sheena help me with these photos. Yeah, they are very similar. Is it a coincidence? I'm really not sure. It's almost like some kind of. These are very weathered. These are just being piled out outside the museum next to battered old cars. Which is kind of that one there as well. But they look remarkably similar to what you see. This is Katimbo as well. This is another children's site which we went to with David a few months ago. And these beautiful relief carvings again. Can't help it. It's just everyone notices that just looks like a Göbekli Tepe. You can't. It's a no-brainer. It looks like it. If it's a coincidence, we don't know. But I think there's connections here. Even in Costa Rica, this is at the San Jose Museum where the stone spheres are kept. The same culture created these. I think they're called lapida boards or lapida boards. And they have these beautiful relief carvings on. Look at this one. Well, look at all of them. They're all virtually the same, but beautiful. Just jump out at you. These little critters, these little creatures. Virtually the same style and design. So it just, the more you look, the more you see. This is Göbekli Tepe. This is one of the first ones they discovered there. This is Göbekli Tepe. This is Costa Rica. This is Silistani. And this is actually where David's recently visited in the Bada Valley in Indonesia. And these show you these beautiful relief carvings on this great lid of one of the jars David was talking about earlier. So it's same style, same design. It's pretty wonderful the more you look. And then we come back to the serpents. Obviously, this is at Göbekli Tepe. Almost shows like a sort of net of serpents here. This is from Navali Kori. It's the back of someone's head, which looks. This goes back to very close to the era of Göbekli Tepe, which is extremely ancient. Looks remarkably similar to the Vedic symbols and style you get up from ancient India. These are just in Cusco. This is Katimbo. This, I think, is at Katimbo or Silistani. And then we have Earth and Man, which Robert talked about earlier, the cool Star Trek column there. This was actually, again, this is probably a representation of one of the sphere builders, sphere carvers of Costa Rica. This is in the San Jose Museum. Slight resemblance. That one has a little mouth. And this was found in some kind of ancient Mayan grave thing. Again, it just looks a bit similar. Andrew Collins pointed that out, so I thought I'd put that in the slide. And also in Turkey, again, we find similarities to Peru, which is something I'm extremely excited about because I'm a megalithomaniac. We see these huge polygonal walls. This is Alakahuyuk in Turkey, very close to a couple of hour or two from Ankara, the Turkish capital, and I couldn't believe it when I saw that. I saw some photo on that, so I sort of made our tour company go there when we went there, changed the whole itinerary, upset everyone, but it was worth it. Check this out. Yeah, we're going back there. We're bringing Brian Forrester with us in May because of the Peru connections. He was desperate to come and he didn't get off my back about it. So he's coming with us because we wanted to kind of see there's so many similarities Peru, it gets silly. It goes on and on and on. And you have to question, who were the Hittites? Who were the people there before the Hittites? Was there a global, were they traveling? And again, this is just some random thing, it's not really part of this lecture, but this is actually in San Augustine in Colombia, which I found remarkably fascinating. When you look at the moai, the red top knots and things like that. I thought Robert might be interested in that, but that was just a strange little coincidence. He's got fangs. They don't have fangs, I don't think. But these have, they all have fangs in Colombia, if anyone's interested. And polygonal stuff, we've seen some of this already, but this is like Cusco, this is one of the smaller pyramids on the Giza Plateau. Again, one of the platforms at Easter Rome. This is in western Italy. There's like 40 or so sites along the coast of western Italy. This is in Saudi Arabia. Again, we have the relief carvings and the polygonal style together in Saudi Arabia. This is again in western Italy. Again, we have the great polygonal style with the relief carvings over the doorway. More from Italy. This is in Albania, not far from the Greek border. This is Delphi in Greece. Again, this is Alakahuyuk and Hattusas, which is again very close to Hittite capital, which has got much earlier megalithic stuff happening here, such as this and this. We went there with Graham Hancock, and he was just saying you could just be walking around Cusco. This is like being a sexy Roman in Cusco. It's like the same. It's like almost the same people did it. I can't see how that's a coincidence. You don't just accidentally carve massive megalithic blocks of stone and construct them in the most difficult way possible, just for the sheer hell of it, do you? I'm sure you find the easier solution. This is just shows you some of the megalithic carvings there. This is Graham at the Alakahuyuk, which is clearly older than the Hittites. That's actually been documented now. Earlier culture, and we find these skulls that David mentions as well, and Brian have been doing some excellent research. I know Brian sent me a few pictures recently for this lecture. Not only are they in Peru, they're all over the place. This is Ecuador, Ukraine, Malta, Mexico. These are different ones to the ones in the Museum of Mexico. This is Micronesia, obviously North America, which is this one interested me. This is across mountains in Iraq. Look at the size of that. That's about 7,000 years old, at least. So, it's not near Göbekli Tepe, but it's that general kind of, area. Just gives you a bit more, like some skull, isn't it? That's, you don't want to meet him in a dark alley, really. Nor him. This one with a scared hell out of you. This is actually found in Pennsylvania. Did you have this in your talk yesterday? This is actually a 7.5 foot skeleton they found in Pennsylvania with horns. And there's been 5 other skulls found with small horns coming out in North America as well. It's just one of them. It looks fake. Apparently it's not. The research I've done
Where is that located?
off the top of my head, I've got all the notes on the laptop I can show you. It's near one of the mound sites, or one of the mound sites in Pennsylvania. No, it disappeared not long after this photograph was taken. Probably because of them, This is in Wisconsin, but there's many examples of these elongated skulls, as David and Brian's book clearly points out. There's just a couple of, I thought this one was just kind of compelling, really. Again, this is just carrying on from what David was saying about the Olmec. Again, had these elongated skulls. This is from the, I think this is from the National, this might be from Jalapa Museum. I'm not sure if it's National Museum or Jalapa Museum. That's the whole Olmec kind of style, really, as you can see from the jade figurines. And these are some examples from Peru, different areas of Peru. This is the whole Paracas culture, the Ica area. This is from up in Huaraz. I went up there to see Chavin, they have elongated skulls, they have the cleft skulls, and they have like a giant skull, all in one little display, which is quite convenient. Again, this is another example of what David showed earlier, which is the gold plating, and the bone has grown around the gold, which would be quite cool, you know, thing to have. A gold area on your forehead, tooth. This was relatively recently found at Pumapunku and Tiwanaku. It's actually, weirdly, it's not in the museum. All the photos David showed earlier, they don't show you those skulls anymore. You're not allowed to see them. But if you go to the nearby restaurant, which is just open, they've got a little area. You can go and see some amazing elongated skulls that have been discovered at Pumapunku. So there you go. So you don't need museums anymore, just go to restaurants. Loads of examples. This is one of Brian's friends put this together around the world. Just the same me doing it, really. Different, elongations. Some appear natural, some don't. I'm just fascinated by. I'm fascinated by these skulls. I highly recommend David and Brian's book, Enigma Cranial Leaflets. It's a strange phenomenon, and the giants is a very strange phenomenon. I'm wondering, personally, are these the megalith builders? Are these the global elite? Are these the navigators? Are these the people who built all these sites? Why are there so many connections? There seem to be two different races to me. There seems to be the elongated skull people, where they could be aliens. I'm not sure. They might not be. They might just be very strange looking humans. And then we have the giants. Where did they come from? And were they connected in any way? Or was it completely separate races? Maybe they were the ones battling it out in all the legends around the world. Who knows? But the evidence is there now. It's there for the taking, and we need to kind of look at this again as, as independent researchers, just as the general public, to question where we came from and who our ancestors were, because we're not being told the truth, unfortunately. This is an interesting one. I shouldn't really put that on there because Robert's here. But this was found in the Euphrates Valley in southeast Turkey, Göbekli Tepe. And this guy's reconstructed from some reports that were found of these giant bones down that area. And this is actually, you can see this in Texas. I think it's in Texas. It's probably written on here somewhere. This guy is actually in Peru now with Brian, casting loads of the elongated skulls. So it does suggest, as we see with the legends, the biblical stories, that yes, of course giants were around in the whole kind of fertile crescent area. And then this is, I've got my tongue in cheek a little bit here. This is a photograph someone apparently paid $200 to see. This is a 20 Egyptian note of a mummified finger. Now look at the size of that. And it's supposed to be the finger of a giant found in Egypt, which is 16 foot tall. Again, I'm not claiming any fact thing with this. This was taken from the internet. But take a look, someone paid $200 to get that photograph, then thank you very much. It could be a massive fake, it could just be, dried up hot dog, who knows, but look, it's got the bone in it, hasn't it? And again, jumping back to North America, many of the mound culture sites all over North America. I went to a place called Lompoc Ranch in California to go and investigate a 12-foot skeleton that was supposedly found there in the early 1900s. This was back 6 years ago, I guess in 2008 I went there. The whole place is now a military zone. It's a military camp. You can't go into Lompoc Ranch anymore where they found it, which I thought was quite interesting. These are from New York State, in fact. This is like Western New York State. There's some reconstructions of bones that were found. This is one of the skeletons, one of the only photographs of a 7-foot giant. It would have been 7 or 8 foot maybe. So he's cut off at his knees here. Found actually in one of the mounds at Serpent Mound, not the Serpent Mound itself, one right next to it. This is the famous Irish giant, and this is the San Diego giant, which was sold to the Smithsonian for $500, and there's a receipt that you can actually find online. Very similar looking, both 12 feet tall. I don't think they're fakes, personally. I really don't. I think this is compelling evidence. Then you get these giant footprints. This is the giantest footprint, unless Michael Tollander has shrunk somewhat. But this is found in South Africa. This is actually granite. So I don't know how you get a footprint in granite. But it's just so heavy, I guess. But you can see where the toes have gone in and pushed up the kind of rock there when it was molten or whatever. So there's more to this than meets the eye. But I think this is this place is the smoking gun to me. This is where it gets strange, because it's the only place I'm 100%, well, there's some places in North America which have evidence of this, where earlier, 100 or so years ago, they found giant skeletons here, between 7 and 8 feet tall in Sonora, Mexico, which is not that far from the American border, it's only 150 miles south or something. And more recently, they found the elongated skull people there, the same place, in the same area. So this is one of the only areas where they were just coincidentally there at different times, or they were meeting, there was like these two elites meeting, or it could have been something else. It could have just, maybe the giants were the longheads and they didn't report it properly back in the early 1900s. This is the guy here who actually found them. The other thing is that they were blonde. These giants they found earlier last century were blonde giants. They weren't, or maybe red-haired, as we find in the southwest of America. But so to me, this is just all coming out now. Like Göbekli Tepe is like a relatively new discovery. There's stuff still just buried, and we're still starting to find it. As long as if the Smithsonian could just sort of go away and stop throwing everything away, we might get somewhere. Because I think there's a lot more to be found still. I think people with private collections are going to come forward with what they've got, and we're going to start to get some real indication of our true ancestry and where we came from. And I think that's one of the things that is wrong with this world. We need to kind of address. This is just an Irish example. This is just a small book I'm working on with Jim Vieira at the moment, as Mika mentioned earlier. We just want to kind of, just bung tons of reports in there and kind of just highlights and tons of reports. So it's just like to the the institutions, like you can't deny this. There's 1,500 reports. We're all truth seekers. We're all looking for the answers to what the hell is going on. And I guess that's it. So thanks very much. Hello everybody. Sorry to keep you out of the sun and the jacuzzis, and the bars and the gambling, but you can do that tonight. So thanks for having me here, Mike. It's great to share the floor, really, with Robert, Mika and David. So today I'm going to move pretty quickly because we've run over a little bit of time, which is kind of standard procedure for these kind of things. But I want to go through quite a few different subjects here. I'm trying not to repeat anything that the other speakers have said, but there are some crossovers, because the way I look at things from a sort of global perspective. I just can't help it. I become like an obsessed megalithomaniac traveller, and I get all around the world at any opportunity, on cruises, boats, balloons, anything you like. These are some photos of these sort of serpents, which I keep finding all over the world. Only part of this talk is going to cover this idea that there was like some kind of serpent elite. What I'm interested in is what that means. I believe it has some connection with earth energies, with ley lines, with grids and things like this, as well as the rising of the Kundalini and possibly shamanic and psychedelic things as well. But as we go through, we'll see, see how all this fits together. This is my book. It's a small book. It's not anywhere near the size of this. It's deceived a few people when I've shown it. Oh, it's tiny. But I've put together a whole kind of history and outline of what is going on with Earth grids, ley lines, sacred sites, and Earth energies into one little volume, which was an intense amount of work. We're going to cover some of that in the lecture today. This guiding source behind these different geometries we're finding on different planets, and how does it relate to us and the Earth. He just shows you another picture from NASA. Just borrowed that off their website. And even on Saturn's moon, Iapetus, we find this ridge that goes around the whole centre of the moon, which is about 12 miles tall, 12 miles wide. It's almost like a wall has been built around the dead centre. It's like a tennis ball's been cut in half and glued together, roughly. It's very strange. So there's lots of these strange anomalies, which really kind of caught my attention when I was looking at grids on Earth. This just shows you if a dodecahedron is placed within a sphere, which is a 12-sided polyhedral. And you can see that when these Russian researchers back in the early 70s first did some research on this, because they were inspired by someone else, Ivan Sanderson, we'll talk about in a moment. They realised if you just place a dodecahedron, fix it at the north and south pole and rotate it to the right place, the whole mid-Atlantic ridge almost follows this whole dodecahedral shape. So we're seeing first glimpses really of a planetary grid here. And even Plato famously said that the Earth looks like a ball sewn from 12 pieces of skin, paraphrased, which would resemble a dodecahedron, so it's got 12 faces. And this is the Ivan Sanderson research that kind of really blew my mind. I mean, this was found in the early 1970s. He was a paranormal investigator, he was a biologist, but he did some excellent research on the different, what he called violent vortices around the world. And it was later published by Chris Bird in an article, The 12 Devils Graveyards Around the World. And the Bermuda Triangle, which we're actually sailing through right now, or maybe last night when we are on an ancient alien cruise, so I want to just have a few little potential alien things thrown in there. I've been fascinated by these grids, but when I started looking at other planets and looking at what other researchers have found, there's a remarkable amount of geometries and alignments and anomalies on other planets. Mars is a classic one. And you can see here, this is the start of what we're getting into grids here. If you place a tetrahedron in a sphere, it touches the surfaces at 19.47 or 19.5 degrees above or below the equator, depending which way you put it in. Interestingly, there's massive volcanoes, the Olympus Mons volcanoes, are at that latitude on Mars. We have Hawaii, we have that on Earth, and there's other anomalies throughout our solar system with various planets that also have stuff on the surface at 19.5 degrees north or south latitude. And that kind of compelled me. We even have some solar flare activity peaks around this kind of latitude as well. This just shows you where Olympus Mons is, which is the largest volcano complex in our solar system. We also have odd geometries on Miranda, Uranus's moon. We have pentagons and hexagons kind of forming there. We even have great big triangles, which could be faces of an icosahedron. We'll get a bit more into what that means regarding the Earth shortly. Even on Saturn, at the north pole of Saturn, we have this huge hexagon, which is double the width of the Earth. It's huge, and it kind of stays there. It kind of just maintains its composure. It's like a cymatic pattern. It just holds its energy there while everything spins around it. I mean, I don't know if this is just the nature of planets, the nature of the cosmos, but it does make you question what is underneath all this. It's actually cut off at the bottom, but it doesn't matter. I just want to sort of paraphrase a few points from this. This is one of my mentors, one of the legendary figures who inspired me more than anyone else in the world, I have to admit. He died a few years ago. He founded Megalithic with us, this conference and these tours and events we put on. There's me and him up there on the top right. John Michel wrote the brilliant book, The View Over Atlantis, back in 1969, and he was talking about things we're talking about today, but a long time before now, and he was a real visionary, a real pioneer, and he saw this picture of the way these mounds, megaliths, and ancient sites went from horizon to horizon all over the planet, and we still, even back in 1969 and still today, we're still trying to work out what was going on. And he was very aware of the serpent, what he called serpent or dragon lines, these energies, and how the symbolism became part of that. So I'm really kind of following on from John Michel's work, because he was a big inspiration for me. And his unfortunate passing left a sort of wide hole about in this kind of research, especially in England. So I'm going to start with some sort of ideas about grids. This is a painting my brother did for my book. This is from a Hopi creation myth, where the creator created these two brothers to create sound and structure with the crystal at the center of the earth. And with these two harmonies happening, he created what was called spots of the form. And these are power spots on the surface of the globe. I go into it in more detail in my book. I'm going to move fairly quickly through this, but it just shows you that even very early creation myths of different cultures around the world had some inkling about kind of grids or global patterns. But let's jump off planet for a moment here, because this is kind of, we're sleeping. We're very close to that, and there's other anomalies. He found lots of different plane disappearances, anomalies, time dilations, and other strange things happening at certain places around the world. And when he mapped them out, he realised they were equally spaced, plus the North and South Pole. Here we have Hawaii, around Easter Island, the Devil's Triangle, or off the coast of Japan, and many others. It shows you the 3D version of that. Exactly what he realised he found was a icosahedron, which is a 20-sided, 20 triangles over a sphere. And this just shows you it here. And obviously the points are very interesting. And because he'd done so much research on this, he really did find a planetary grid at work. Not maybe the planetary grid, because I think there's many different ideas about this, not just one. But he found something going on, that these platonic solids, or these natural geometries which fall within spheres, do have an effect on the surface. And maybe we're so small, we don't really get it, we don't understand it. But it's when you start looking at the migratory paths of animals, fault lines, and lots of other global movements, the way things move around the Earth, you start to see the patterns. This just shows you the icosahedron here. I've just drawn a line through Africa there, which is basically what I believe is the original prime meridian, which many other people are realising. It kind of clicks everything into place when you're looking at the placement of sites around the world. The white line there is a very famous the Great Earth Circle, like a global ley line that goes all the way around the planet, discovered by Jim Allenson. And he found many hundreds of sites kind of linking around this. If any of you have seen Revelation of the Pyramids documentary,